Hello everybody. So we're back for the second of our pundit shows here at the Phocuswright Conference this week. So we've convened a group of experts in the industry, or pundits. So treat this as the middle of a soccer game. And we're going to discuss some of the things that you've heard already today, some of the things that you're hoping to hear for the rest of the week, and just general things around what's been going on in the industry. So we've had Alix half a morning or so of hearing some, in quotes, innovation and brilliant startups and things like that. I mean, you've seen a lot of it. Give us your general overview of the quality and any in particular that stood out for you.
We've seen some pretty cool things, to be honest. I think the one that stands out to me the most is probably Redeem. It's a very simple, elegant solution to a problem that's existed for a very long time. So it's basically the redemption of vouchers for day tours and activities, which today doesn't exist. It's all very paper-driven, and Redeem really takes it to a whole new level and makes it really simple. And I think that's really cool because it's not reinventing something, it's just fixing a problem that exists in a very simple way. So I would say that's probably the one that's stood out the most to me.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, tours and activities and attraction isn't Amadeus's core. Nope. So, as our person here from Amadeus, are you interested because it's just interesting, or because Amadeus isn't in that space and perhaps needs to be?
Oh, God, that's a tricky question. I think I'm interested in it because, like I said, it's a simple solution, it's elegant, and I think that's what draws it to me. A lot of startups many times think that they have to overcomplicate things. They're trying to fix a problem, and sometimes by fixing it, they make it much more complicated than it needs to be. And what I found with Redeem is that they didn't do that. They just made it very simple and kept it simple. So I think that's what drew me to it, not necessarily me wearing my Amadeus hat.
Okay, that's great. So, so Max, you saw a few of them as well. I mean, any that stood out in particular for you?
Well, I like frequent flyer points, so the first performance was really lovely for me because I'm clearly the audience for that gentleman. Not that I would invest my own money into it, but the product seems to be good.
Okay.
It's funny actually if you think about it. There is kind of renowned interest now in the tourism activities, right? Because they used to be Viator, used to be Get Your Guide, and so on, and now we see more and more startups coming again to that scene. That's it's fun to watch because something must have changed to make it attractive to those companies again.
What do you think has made it change? I mean, we've just had two enormous funding rounds go into that sector in the last week. So Klook raised 65, I think it was, and Get Your Guide raised 75 a few days later. So what is it that's warmed up again about that particular market, do you think?
Well, clearly the sizes of rounds, and obviously people say, okay, well, we don't need $75 million. We could do the same for 7.5, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly wouldn't believe that because obviously there is a time effect of it and so on. Again, I wouldn't be betting on it. But it's fun to watch because history repeats in circles, and now hopefully we'll get to meta search in 10 years' time as well, again.
So if history does repeat itself, then Ben, presumably we're going to see hundreds of trip planning startups here next year, are we? Or would you hope not?
I would hope not. No, but I don't think for the trip planning startup case, I don't think we'll see anything out there that is substantial. I think the big ones have shown everyone that they will win the market, and we'll see more and more consolidation, and what they predicted a couple of years back, that size matters. I think now you see that really size matters.
Right, okay. And we'll come back to you, Alix. Is there anything that you were quite disappointed with, or you just thought either, oh, not that again, or something else, or was it generally quite a positive series of presentations this
morning? I won't name any names, but I tend to immediately, when it's an end consumer site that people are presenting, I immediately take out my phone and go to the website and try to use it and see how easy it is to use. And I can tell you that one of them was very, very difficult to use, and I kind of gave up, honestly. So I was a little disappointed in that because I couldn't even get past Go on their site. So I would say that's probably painful.
Did you see there was one this morning in particular called MadeBot?
Yep.
Tell us what MadeBot is and what you thought of it.
So MadeBot is basically It's a robotic vacuum cleaner, kind of like Roomba and others that are out there, that is used in the hospitality space, and it's got a lot of radar on it that can determine where it's been and where it needs to go, and apparently has incredible suction power and things like that. I found it very odd to be at this show, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
Cute in terms that it's called Rosie, after Rosie the maid in the Jetsons. So I like that.
Okay.
But other than that, I didn't really understand the tie-in. Yes, okay, it's for hospitality for hotels, but didn't really get the tie-in to being at this show, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I thought it was quite
It's a hard
interesting.
problem to solve.
It is a hard problem to solve. I mean, it is a solution with a problem to solve, right?
Hey, Dyson's been doing quite well in it, so hey.
Yes, I've heard of that one. So, you know, Ben, you've been here and done this a couple of times now, as in presenting a major conference in a pitch. Do you watch them enviously that they're going through that process, or do you think, thank goodness that's all
I'm
over?
so happy I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very hard. I mean, kudos for everyone who's up there.
Right.
So it's huge crowd, and presenting in front of them is a challenge.
Yep.
So I give credit to everyone who tries, and that's, you know, taking part of it is the first checkbox, and then if they do a good job or not, it's like it doesn't matter afterwards. I mean, there are better ones and there are not so good ones, but I give kudos to everyone.
Yeah, and you've presented here
it was
before
4
as
years
well,
ago,
Matt. So I
yeah.
mean, it's quite interesting that. Do you sense as a company that in your early stages you need to come and do things like this? And I'm not trying to do an advert for this particular thing, but I mean, is the exposure really? Is it so good that you?
Can I say no?
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so.
No, okay. But you did it. I mean, and you've stayed the course. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, a lot of those that you do see present have survived, whereas the 83 or 84% of travel startups that have gone under, you know, I mean, the catastrophe rate is very high in travel.
Yeah. Well, I said no just for one reason. You should be presenting in front of your customers.
Right.
If this audience is not your customer, you're just spending your time.
And this is back to the B2C point,
That's
isn't it?
back to the B2C. Well, no, to be fair, we are all consumers of something. And being in travel, we are also consumers of travel products. But on the other hand, when you're trying to preach to the totally wrong audience, sometimes, it's most of the B2B, for example, I think they have a very high chance of finding really good partnerships or really good clients. That's without saying. But yeah, for a B2C, it's I think it's a bit more tricky.
Okay.
For us, it was awesome. I can say 2010 when we started 2008 and we presented 2010 the first time, and it put us on the map. We found afterwards we found a lot of partners. We even got almost acquired.
Right back then?
Right back then, after the show, I cannot name the company, but it's a big search company who came after us after that.
Would it be the biggest search company?
I cannot say. So it was really fantastic. It didn't, for many reasons, didn't happen, which was great. But for us, it was put us on the map, and since then, we were kind of part of that industry.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It depends on who you are, if you should pitch here or not. But in generally, I think it gives you a lot of exposure to a lot of people in the industry here.
Right, and I mean, just on the kind of the startup culture for a moment, you've gone from being a startup to being acquired now.
Yeah.
Is there? We were talking about this earlier on. Is, you know, often the startup culture is quite fun. It's agile. You can less constraints, owned by a big company. All due respect to Amadeus, but
No
do you know what I
problem.
mean? I mean, do you miss being a startup, or is it all kind of worked out nicely for you?
One thing, you know, our business angel when we started, 2008, he said, you know, one day you're the king, enjoy it, it's not going to last very long.
Okay.
So that's the one thing I learned, and it's like an up and down and up and down. Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's completely devastating. And do I miss the fun parts now? It's like, yeah, do I miss the devastating parts? No, not so really. So it's like, I think everything has a time. For us, it was a good time now to, you know, be acquired and have a different kind of story now, and different kind of growth story with a corporate in our back. But I would say, yeah, I don't miss right now being out there and pitching to an audience. So I'm fine where I am right now.
Yeah, something I find quite interesting when an organisation the size of Amadeus, which does, let's be fair, often talk about how much money it spends on its research and development. It gets European awards for doing so and all these kind of things. I mean, do you often, when you're sitting in there thinking, well, that's perhaps something that we need, an idea that we need to do ourselves, or do you think we should hire these guys? Or, I mean, how does an organisation like Amadeus think about how it deals with startups and innovation?
It's really interesting for us. We look at it from two parts, right? We definitely look at what's the innovation out there, what are people focusing on. If we see a lot of people focusing on one specific topic, we definitely take that into consideration and say that's something we need to be looking at as well, or are we falling behind in that area? Do we look at hiring them? Maybe. Hey, if the talent's there and we need talent in that area, why not? I mean, to be honest, it's a good breeding ground for us to understand what's out there and what's happening. But we also look at it as another way, in a way of how can we help those startups, right? So we're a technology provider. We can provide technology to anybody. So if we've got something that we think could also help those startups, that's why we want to see what's happening. We want to be there and help those startups succeed. And that's why we have Amadeus for Startups.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to come to that. There was one of the previous panels that we had, we were talking about large travel companies, of which there has been a growing trend of large travel companies getting into the world of incubation and accelerators, or whatever label you want to give it. And
we're a little different in that area, though. Yeah.
Which I'm sure you'll tell us about momentarily. But I mean, what is Amadeus's motivation for getting into that? I mean, because the previous panel had some quite interesting points of view on it. I want to hear your answer before I give you what they said.
So I'll be honest, the reason we like to get into it is because, again, as a technology provider, we want to know who we can provide technology to. And we want to get in early with those guys, right? We want to build a partnership with a startup who next day could be the biggest online travel agency in the world or the biggest meta search company in the world. We want to be the technology that powers those. So we try to get in early at the startup thing. That's why I say we're a little bit different. We're not an accelerator. We're not an incubator. We're providing technology, and we're building a marketplace for our startups to have connections that they need. They're not all us. We're trying to just build that marketplace for them.
Yeah, and interestingly, Max, I remember many years ago, there was a general perception that, and you'll probably glare at me for saying the gatekeepers, but people like Amadeus were often called the gatekeepers of technology and connections and APIs and distribution data and all those kind of things. And I remember lots of startups, perhaps may have been one like you, but of the similar vein, saying, it would be so much easier if companies like Amadeus had decided that they could work with this or make it easier for startups to do that. Why do you think an organisation like Amadeus has changed or has got into the startup world now? Why do you think she's doing it?
Well, so we started using Amadeus when we were already big. But if I could take a guess, that would be that you must always be on the lookout for not maybe even for the next big thing. Maybe even a startup could be the gateway into a bigger company that acquires that startup later on, and that bigger company will use Amadeus technologies as well. So there are lots of ways to get into the big organization, but obviously scale cannot be achieved with smaller companies.
Okay.
I can just, from our experience, the bigger we got, the slower we got. And I think the same happens for Amadeus and others that we see that had these programs now. And you just lose speed, and in that environment, you cannot really lose that speed. So what happens is then either they have form their own startup within the company kind of thing. We call it squads, like little independent teams that can run by themselves. Or you partner, with outside companies and you help them and give them some money and give them a place to grow, et cetera, and that's how you try to get speed. And I think that's one of the things that we see that people recognize that you need to get faster and get ideas out faster, which you cannot do sometimes in your core organization, your core business.
Right, okay. Let's just change tack. I mean, we're going to hear over the course of the next couple of days from the CEOs of all the major online travel agencies. It becomes a who's who of the industry. Who are you particularly interested in hearing speak? Let's just go with you first, Max.
Steve Hafner, for sure.
Steve Hafner?
Steve Hafner, I love the guy.
Just because he's entertaining or because he has deep and meaningful things to say?
He is incredibly smart.
Okay.
So it's just, you write down everything he says, and yeah, you just reread it, and you still find meaning in it.
Okay. And I mean,
I'll tell him that.
and beyond that, I suppose, often the best conversations that you have at a conference are not what you hear on stage. It's when you're in the networking and the dinners in the evening and in the corridors and things like that. I mean, I know it's only just started here, but what do you sense are going to be some of the hot things that people are talking about this year? And we'll start with you, Alex.
I think we're going to see. Well, we've already heard it on stage several times. The infamous blockchain.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff going on, around blockchain, and is it going to kill the GDS? Is it going to revolutionize travel? What's it going to do? I think there's going to be some discussion on that.
Presumably, it's not going to kill the GDS. You would
Of course
say.
not.
Okay, right.
How many times have the GDSs died in the past? Come on, we're
Forever
still around.
The forever dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite.
So, I mean, I often wonder whether the conversations and the issues that we talk about in the media, so we're thinking about airline distribution and NDC, or direct versus intermediaries in hotels and in the OTA lounge, whether those are the conversations that happen amongst once all the industry gets together, and I wonder whether they're not really. I mean, are people talking about airline distribution here? I don't.
Not at the bar last night, for sure.
Not at the bar. No, exactly. It's interesting that it's just an observation that often the conversations that you hear in the wider world of the conference aren't the ones that we as journalists think are particularly newsworthy. Maybe that says more about us. But anyway. So, and finally, anything that you're particularly looking forward to seeing?
Personally, I'm curious about where chat and voice is going.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've seen that in the last couple of years, but now it seems to be a little bit slowing down. But I don't know where it goes.
Do you have an Amazon Echo?
I don't.
You do?
I have many.
You have many.
I have 2 Echoes, 2 Dots. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask why you have so many?
I was an early adopter. I got it when it
Clearly.
was still by invitation only, because I have them in different areas of the house. So.
Of course.
Because you never know when you might need to know information.
Okay. Do you have a voice-activated device interface?
I had Google Home, and I switched it off for one reason. It doesn't work with G Suite calendars. And I need that a lot. So I was so disappointed, was so angry at it, that I just, until they build new firmware, I'm not using it.
Okay, so we end with the PhocusWire question lottery. So we've got a couple of minutes left, so you put your hand in, you pull out the question, read the question out and answer it as quickly as you can and pass it on to the person next to you. So over to you,
Here
please.
comes my luck. Alrighty. What question do you never want to be asked in interviews? Sure, I know the answer to that one. What do you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay.
I hate that question because I don't know.
Ben, to you.
Me? On a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky are you? I'd say I'm fortunate. 8.
Okay, good. Pass it on.
Of course, I get the work one. What travel industry development or brand do you wish you'd thought of first? I'll go with Uber.
Uber, okay. Back to you.
Are we continuing? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
Uber.
It's still one of us. If you could be anyone in the world, dead, alive, fictional, famous, who would you be?
Trump.
Freddie Mercury.
Okay.
What industry development did you expect to be bigger? Oh, that's a big one. Blockchain.
Revenue management.
Revenue
Review
management. Reputation management.
Reputation management.
Identify a mistake you see people making more than any other. Overcomplicating simple things.
Okay, right. So thank you very much to Max, to Ben, and to Alex. So thank you for letting me spring that on you at the end. This is another Pundit Show. We have many more of these coming up over the next couple of days. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. Thanks to our panel. Thank you.